Hello, you're watching James. My name's James. You're watching me, and I am talking about watches. Well, is this a real thing? Is this something that has been leaked by the Swatch Group? Are they reinventing the Moonswatch for 2023? Well, I can't tell you. I don't know. I do apologise, but I do not have any insight into the Swiss making sort of genre. What I can say, however, is there is a fairly big consensus online to say that this is actually a piece of fan fiction. What it has done, however, it has reignited people's interest in the Moonswatch. It certainly has reignited my interest in the Moonswatch, because up until I saw this image, my interest in the Moonswatch was a big zero. I've had no interest in the Moonswatch recently. And I think it has made me rethink a little bit of my thoughts behind the Moonswatch, because I think a lot of you have been on the same journey, or at least the same mental journey that I have been on in relation to the Moonswatch. And I'm going to get back to this image in a moment. But personally, for me, when the Moonswatch was sort of released, or there was the idea of the Moonswatch was coming, I became really excited about the idea. The idea of a watch that had a great classic look that we all know, had the Omega logo on it, that is absolutely fantastic. Like most people, I do like the brand Omega, and at a price that I could actually afford. My interest level was on this skyrocket trajectory. I was like, wow, I want one of these. I'm going to get one of these. And that skyrocketing trajectory of excitement suddenly came to an abrupt halt when I suddenly realized I was not going to be able to get one. Because it was released that these watches were only going to be released in limited numbers at the Swatch shops, and the nearest Swatch shop to me is a 4.5-hour flight from where I live, and I'm not jumping on a plane to buy a watch. So this trajectory of excitement suddenly stopped, and then it started to go down because I thought, oh, okay, here we go. I'm not going to be able to get a hold of one of these. This downward trajectory then suddenly stopped again and started going back up again when I started to see images and footage of people lining up for this watch, lining up for a watch that they probably ended up not being able to buy because there were limited numbers. So I started feeling a little bit better about myself to say, well, I'm glad that I didn't go and line up at a store. I'm glad that I didn't miss out and get that disappointing feeling from getting into a shop and not being able to buy a watch that I was actually wanting to buy. So now I was back to being a little bit excited again because I thought, okay, let's wait for these watches to be released online. They've said that it's not going to be a limited release, so let's just play the waiting game and let's get one when they become available. So now I'm waiting and waiting and waiting, and I'm sure you were waiting as well, because we're all starting to think, oh, this would be quite a fun thing to have in the collection. But I'm so glad there was this waiting period, because during this waiting period, these watches started to make their way onto the internet, started to be reviewed, and started to be commented about by people that I watch myself on YouTube. And there was a very specific sort of thoughts towards this watch. In fact, there was two thoughts. Firstly, is this a good idea by Omega, by the Swatch Group? Was it a good marketing ploy? And yeah, there is a discussion point about that, but that doesn't really interest me too much because I'm more thinking about owning a watch. The second thing did interest me though, and the second thing that did interest me was how many people describe this watch as a toy, as something that felt cheap, something that didn't feel particularly good quality, that's something that they weren't really interested in owning themselves. Now, obviously, this is not everybody's opinion. There are people out there that have this watch and they love it and they wear it, and that's great. But I certainly started to realize that this is not something that I actually wanted to own. I didn't want to spend my money on something that just had an awesome logo on it, that just had a sort of good look to it. I want to spend my money on something that I actually want to wear. And the more I saw footage of it, the more I got opinions from other people online about it, the more I realized that actually this is not a good value equation for me. I'm not going to buy a watch just because of a logo that is on a dial. I'm not going to buy a watch just because it has a classic shape that I may like. It has to be a watch that actually has that good value equation, but more than that, it has to be a watch that I actually want to wear. And from what I've seen online, the Moonswatch is not something that I think I actually would enjoy wearing. So my interest in the Moonswatch suddenly fell off a cliff and went into oblivion. No interest at all in the Moonswatch since that point, up until this image popped up online. And this image has really demonstrated something for me about the Moonswatch and about watches in general, because it introduces another element, an element that for me actually adds value, and that is the fun factor of this watch. Now, people will say that the Moonswatch already has some fun factor built in with the different colors and different variations, and yeah, I think that is partially true, but for me, certainly not enough. This, however, if this became reality, this is something that creates a bit of fun factor to me. People have also mentioned a Snoopy version. Now, obviously, this is the actual Amiga Snoopy version. There hasn't been any images released or put together by anybody of a Moonswatch Snoopy, but the idea of it creates some fun factor for me. It sort of reaches inside me into my inner child and makes me go, oh, that's fun. Maybe I would actually like wearing that, even if the quality wasn't particularly great. Because fun factor is certainly value to me. I buy things quite regularly because of fun factor. I do things throughout my life because of fun factor, and I'll spend money on it. So this may not be a real image. This may have been put together by somebody who's just interested in the Moonswatch and proposing something that may be a little bit fun. But what it has done, it has reignited my interest in this idea. It is something that possibly may happen in the future. You just never know. A year or so ago, people would never have thought that a Moonswatch was even possible. So the idea of this, albeit may not be true, it certainly may be possible. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts about the Moonswatch? Have you bought one? Did you like it? Am I perhaps being a little bit too overly critical of it? Or do you agree with me and think it's not really worth the money? What do you think about this image? What do you think about an idea of a 2023 re-release of the Moonswatch in different variations that perhaps have a little bit of a fun factor to them? Guys, I really appreciate you sticking around for my video. I know it's just me talking about something that possibly may exist, possibly may not exist, but it's something that's been going around in my head since I saw this image, and I really wanted to get those thoughts in and onto a video sort of format. It helps me get these thoughts out of my head. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I do hope to see you in the next video.